Welcome to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprofit.com. And now your hosts,
one of the Fantasy
Craig and
Football
Jeff.
Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips. Joined as always by Jeff Torrey, and today we're talking Week 10. Yes, Week 10 already. Waiver wire pickups, and we'll try to make this interesting, Jeff. There's not that many pickups this week, so I'm going to go through them. We'll just go through some of the guys that we, think could be worth a spot on your roster. So I will start off. There is some running backs here that I think, disclaimer before we start, we usually try to keep these lists to players that are owned in 40% of ESPN leagues or less, just because if we start going above that, they're owned in most of those other leagues. So if we're going 40% and under, I think there's some names here. The names aren't great, but I'm actually I'll even start it off with like a Wayne Goldman. Okay. If Devonte Freeman's still hurt, Wayne Goldman has done enough in the last 2 weeks to deserve a pickup. He doesn't do it. He's not the greatest running back in the world, but he's gotten touchdowns in each of the last 3 weeks. He was 14 to 68 and a touchdown this week. If you need a 1 week guy, and you have no Devonte Freeman on the team next week, I have a feeling Freeman's been hurt for 2 weeks. They play one more week and then they have a bye. A lot of times that ends up playing out where the guy just is gone till the bye. So if he does, maybe Wayne Goldman. I know that's not the most exciting pick, but I think he's good. He's good for like 8 points, right? At the worst case. So I know you love that pick, Jeff. Wayne Goldman. You can't wait to play him.
I had to play him. I'm glad he got in the end zone once again. So you can't argue with the production he's been able to put out on a bad team. Right?
Yeah, he does.
I'm kind of a fan because he's a guy that has produced when you needed him. Yep. And even with Devonte Freeman back,
Freeman hasn't done much.
No, he hasn't. So I don't know why they would go away from Goldman, to be quite honest. So I think he might have some value even after the fact, but we'll find out. It's still a rough offense to be on.
Another name I guess you could still throw out. Don't know how I feel about it, but Jordan Wilkins, because he out carried Jonathan Taylor 11-6. He didn't do much with it though, and I think Taylor's still the more talented back. But maybe there's something there. I don't know, but hey, it is what it is, right? It's just an odd situation.
Yeah, and this will show you how thin the running back waiver is. But the other guy I would say, Gus Edwards. I don't think he has a lot of upside, but he scored a touchdown in the last 3 games. He is their goal line back. I don't know if Ingram is going to be back. If he is, this probably is out the window. But if you do need a guy for 1 week, I think Gus Edwards is an interesting one as kind of a touchdown vulture type of guy.
Another guy, you could throw out Duke Johnson's name if David Johnson isn't cleared to play next week. David Johnson left, I believe, with a concussion this week. Duke Johnson then came in and had 16 carries. He did get a touchdown. His yards per carry wasn't great, but I think 16 carries is also his career high in carries. Duke Johnson's just not a guy who usually is used to a lot of carries. He did catch 4 balls and 2 in that game. So, but if David Johnson is out, Duke Johnson, he'd be a starting running back for the week, and worth probably a consideration in some leagues, in some situations. But a lot of these guys are all the same to me. They're not great players who just have some possible volume.
Yeah, I would like if that turns out to be true. If Duke Johnson gets the start, there's no David Johnson. I would think he would be on the top of my list because do I think David Johnson is anything too special this year? No, not really. But they use him in a way that's predictable and you can count on some production. I don't think that the talent level is such a drop off that you wouldn't see similar, mid-level numbers from him.
So another name that's really interesting to me, this is a lot more interesting in PPR, which he definitely should be on your team, is J.D. McKissick. So he only had 3 carries, 17 yards. The carries aren't what you're even worried, interested in with McKissick, but he had 9 catches for 65 yards, and he plays against Detroit this week. And Detroit, look at Dalvin Cook just did to them. Detroit's they're done. They're no good. We had that brief little, we got to 3-3 and thought they might be good. No, they're bad. They're not good. It's just a bad year for football in the state of Michigan in general, is evidenced by this weekend. Jeez, it was ugly all around. Just really, really, really bad.
It was bad, but oh my God.
Just really bad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't feel that good about State beating Michigan anymore either. The Michigan's pretty bad too. So.
No, I'll still take it. Why not? I'm not gonna lie. I have come to terms with that this year is kind of a wash, but
if the one wins against Michigan, you're good.
Yeah, and that's what happens. So why not? I'll take it to the bank.
But yeah, they play Detroit though next week. J.D. McKissick does. So I mean, it could be. I think that's an interesting ad, especially in PPR. That's a lot more of an interesting ad than standard. Another one. Okay, I don't know how this one's gonna play out, but so Jordan Howard was basically the only back in Miami this weekend, right? Mm-hmm. And so he turns into 10 carries. There's only 19 yards out of it, but he got the one touchdown. This is one I would put way down my list, but this is if you're absolutely desperate and Matt Breida is not back next week. You'd have to be real desperate. So I'll just say his name, and just so people you forgot him. I didn't really forget him. I just don't think he's any good. So there's a reason why I didn't want to talk about Jordan Howard. So wide receiver, let's see. I don't think there's any more backs here. Kalen Ballage, throw out Kalen Ballage's name because he did get some work. Justin Jackson, I think, was injured in pregame. It sounded like. I don't know the extent of it. And Joshua Kelly still would be the main back there for the Chargers, but Kalen Ballage did play, and he was about the third ranked running back at I don't know the end of the week at third or not, but I don't think again. Kalen Ballage isn't a good player. I don't think he's not been a good player. We've seen it. We know he's not. But opportunity sometimes matters more when it gets to this point of the season. He would definitely be down my list again. I'd probably put Ballage ahead of Jordan Howard, to be honest, because I just don't think any of them are good. But it's an ugly week here. So wide receiver wise, I think there's actually still a name we got to bring up again because we like the name and he's hopefully coming back. Allen Lazard. Keep talking about Allen Lazard, right? I don't know exactly his timetable. Is he going to be back here this week? He's getting close. He should be.
We haven't found out yet, but every week I feel like we hear like it could be this week. It could. So I would assume that it's going to be either we see him this week or next week, and I would be surprised if it went further than that. But he is the big name on the board, like you said. We keep saying it. Aaron Rodgers is on fire right now, and hey, Devontae Adams is the clear number one, and then everyone else just fills in. Allen Lazard was having good games before he got hurt. He only played three games, but in those games he caught 2 touchdowns and 63 yards, 45, and then 146 before his unfortunate time of getting hurt. So I think Allen Lazard is a guy that could really make the difference in this playoff push if you are thin on wide receiver. But after him, who would be the next guy that you take?
It's
not clear cut,
huh? So if you want to just take a chance and maybe you get a big touchdown, maybe it's Nelson Aguilar. It's a risky play with him based on how it's been, but maybe. Then I guess next, Tim Patrick is still on my radar there. He only had 4 for 29, but he did catch a touchdown. But it was 9 targets is the thing to look at, really, is the 9 targets yet, where he's still not he's only owned in 14% of leagues. He's another one that you might look at, but I really I'm still really interested in Jalen Reagor and want to see what he can actually do. He finally came back from injury last game. He got 6 targets in his first one back. Travis Fulgham has become the main guy there, but Reagor is extremely talented player. I'd love to see if he gets a chance and what he could do. So I'd be throwing Reagor on my teams if he's out there. And the same thing probably with Denzel Mims. I'm still going to go for these rookies. If you have spots on your bench, just take the chance that their breakout, maybe a late season breakout, starts now, and put them on your roster. So other than that, Jeff, I don't have much for you. It's going to be if you want to go over 40% and break our rule, Curtis Samuel is there at 42%. He's barely over it. Curtis Samuel is interesting with a couple good games in a row. So I'd go after that one. But other than that, no, there's not much going on this week.
Yeah,
at the running back and wide receiver positions, there just isn't.
You pretty much named everyone that I was kind of interested in, so I got nothing left for you.
And I don't even have a tight end for you. I don't even want to throw. Irv Smith, I know got the 2 touchdowns, but that was 2 little touchdowns, and he only had 2 catches. So there's not a lot of great options here. Jordan Reid, I still think Jordan Reid can be better than he was in this past game, but San Francisco is they're done, right? They're just not a good team this year. There's too many injuries and they can't overcome that anymore. Yeah, it feels like, so it worries me about Jordan Reid. I thought he's an interesting option, but gets to a point where you can't do it anymore.
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. I do think that he's interesting still though. But still unbelievably, it's gone up 11% on ESPN, but Dallas Goedert, he's still only owned in 40.3%. For the love of God, pick him up. He didn't do well, but it was his first game back, and now he had a bye. He should be completely healthy. He is someone that you absolutely have to grab. I'm surprised that he hasn't shot up more. The bye really did you a favor if you haven't grabbed him quite yet.
Yep. So I'm going to move over to defense here, get some streaming options for week 10 for you, because I think there's a couple of them out here. So first one, I think, would be the Saints. Saints play against San Francisco. So San Francisco has been bad. Saints, I mean, they're not the greatest defense in the world. They played pretty good against Tampa. So I think the Saints are a really good option against San Francisco. I just don't know how San Francisco gets anything going with Nick Mullins and every running back hurt and bunch of receivers hurt and George Kittle hurt. It's a rough go of it for San Francisco right now. I would not mind playing anybody against them. So I think Saints probably near the top of the list if you're looking defenses that are owned 50% or something or under. Another one, Eagles playing against the Giants. I think that's a good option as well right there. I think those are two pretty solid options, honestly. Saints against 49ers, Eagles against Giants. I like both of them to have pretty solid games this week. Those would be my main two. There's not really those would be the ones I'd like to go with. I don't really think anything else stands out too much. Vikings, I know I could get on board with the Vikings against Chicago because I don't believe in Chicago at all. Packers, Jacksonville. Jacksonville looked a little better this past week, but Packers did play pretty well against San Francisco. But that's, you get a little more desperate. But Saints and Eagles for me.
Yeah, I think those two would probably be my top two. One more that I would throw in there that is kind of my dark horse that I look at every time that there's not a standout is the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're only, rostering 20% of leagues, but every week they do well. We didn't want to go against Arizona for a good reason, but they still put up positive points. I mean, it wasn't a bad outing. And the weeks before that, they have absolutely been killing people. They do go against the Chargers. The Chargers have the ability to put up a lot of points. The thing I do like about them, and I know this is looking a little into the future, but after the Chargers, you do have Denver, the Jets, and Cincinnati. It is kind of a nice little run of a defense that I think could exploit all four of those teams. So I do like them thinking like, if you're not going to stream, if you need one that you're just going to kind of sit with for a few weeks and kind of get ready for the playoffs, I do like the Dolphins.
Yeah. All right. Quarterback. I got one quarterback streaming option for you for this week. And I'd go with Jared Goff playing against Seattle because Seattle's been getting into some shootouts and, Goff's a solid quarterback. Solid enough that he can play against, bad defenses or in a shootout situation. I think he can be okay. He's only owned in 33% of leagues. That's I think one of the plays for the week though, because they can get in these shootouts. So I go with Jared Goff. Other than that, there's not a standout option for me that I really love. Drew Lock, I guess you could take a chance again playing against the Raiders. Raiders don't have some shutdown defense either. So there's that for you. But that's about where I'd go with it. Jared Goff, I think, would be my main option.
Is there any chance you would ever start Tua? He actually had a good game. I want to give him a shout out.
He did. I mean,
see one more game, but
yeah, it would have to be where Goff's not an option, Drew Lock's not an option, and then you know what? Honestly, I'd probably take a chance almost on Tua over some of these others. Like I'd probably start Tua over like a Kirk Cousins, Nick Foles and those guys that are down the list. Baker, honestly, he'd probably be my third option at this point because I kind of know what Daniel Jones is. I don't really care about it. Baker Mayfield, I don't have any confidence. Teddy Bridgewater, maybe I would have said no against Tampa, but Tampa, look what the Saints did to him. So Bridgewater could be up there too. Bridgewater probably had a Tua for me, but they're about right there. So
yeah. And remember, these are quarterbacks are owned in 40% or less. If we're not saying some people's names, that's why.
Exactly. So all right. We're trying to make it more difficult because most of these, we're trying to make it so it's actually realistic for you. But so this is some weeks it makes it a little tougher where you're like, oh God, there's nobody out on the waiver wire. So hey, that's what happens. Week 10. It's good. What's going to happen though? There still is players. I know it happens every year. There are still players out there that will be on the waiver wire that will be on your team for a championship run. Will be a championship winning type player. It happens every single year. It's usually at the running back position. Usually. So maybe that's Kalen Balash this year, and we're just missing it right now.
I hope not. That'd be upsetting.
Hey, I mean, it's happened. What? Tim Hightower, Sean Drone, Cameron Artis-Payne. I remember those names because they were all on my championship teams that I started. Like players like that. It happens almost every year. Damian Williams a few years back came out of nowhere with the Chiefs and became that kind of guy down the stretch for teams. It happens every single year. I bet you there's still guys out there. It's not over yet. It might not be the greatest week of waivers, but hey, just keep paying attention. There'll be somebody out there. So, all right. But that will do it for today. Talk to you guys next time.